Welcome to HIListically Speaking. I'm Hilary Russo, certified holistic health coach and health and wellness journalist. This is an empowering place to explore self-awareness, self-love, and transformation through health, healing, and humor. By sharing life-changing experiences, knowledge, and guests with varied expertise, we'll explore who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. Mind, body, and spirit. I'm glad you're here. Welcome, friends. I have a question for you. When you think of the word warrior, what comes to mind? Bravery, courage, strength, experience, confidence, tenacity, determination. Think about it for a sec. Those are my words. It's definitely a word that can be attributed to a lot of different scenarios and people. Maybe it makes you think of a situation or a person in particular. Especially right now with the world as we're seeing it, there are a lot more voices, a lot more presence, and we are speaking our minds, but we are also doing our part to take care of our bodies and our spirit. A true balanced warrior does all of the above, right? One of which is our guest this week, Chris Poirier-Kim, or CPK. He's been a personal trainer for close to a decade with the goal of making people of all ages fitness ninjas. He's also a two-time Tae Kwon Do Champion and even competed on the popular TV show that you might have seen, America Ninja Warrior. And he is also currently a regular trainer on the live streaming fitness show Daily Burn 365, which is how we met. He's an inspiring activist and advocate for the adoption community and certainly has his own story to tell. CPK, my friend, what a pleasure to have you on HIListically Speaking. What is new and good?
Thank you so much, Hilary, for that wonderful introduction. I'm listening to it and I'm just thinking to myself, I was like, oh my God, I need Hilary to introduce me to every room that I walk into.
You're hired, right?
Seriously. But no, what's new and good? I mean, I think right now, just trying to live life as best as I can in the current world that we live in. It's strange times, very interesting, unprecedented times that we live in. So personally, I mean, outside of trying to keep my mind and body healthy, I'm always trying to educate myself more on like exercise and fitness aspects of my career and how I can apply it to that once everything gets a little back to normal.
Yeah, and now is definitely the time where if we're going to do anything, we have to maintain our fitness, and that's not just physical, but spiritual as well, mentally, to keep ourselves in a positive frame of mind, And you and I, as I mentioned, we both met on Daily Burn 365. And we're so fortunate to have the internet now to be able to, well, we've had it for a while, but we're so fortunate in this situation with this pandemic happening to have the means of using the internet to be able to stay connected for just about everything, especially fitness while gyms are not all open. And it's allowing us to maintain that level of physical that we really need to keep a sense of balance.
1,000% could not agree with that more. And sometimes, especially with how many of us are living right now, it doesn't even necessarily in terms of, exercise need to be anything too strenuous, just something that can get us moving. Because I know many of us have been cooped up in the house, and even just going out for a walk, a hike, whatever it may be, can be enough, not just physically, but even mentally as well.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I want to start this journey with you on the podcast is, you always want to know how people get into something and what kind of inspired you to get into fitness, because it's not just you're a trainer. I mean, you've done some pretty heavyweight stuff. I mean, being the Tae Kwon Do Champion and being on a show like American Ninja Warrior, I mean, that's not small potatoes. I mean, that's some serious conditioning with your body and your mind. But what got you to that point? Where did it begin for CPK?
So there's a couple different, I'd say, parts to this story that all end up connecting. So I'll start at one, then I'll get into the other. I think the first one definitely comes from my athletic background and always being in athletics, or always being active as a child. Like I've always liked to be outdoors. I've always liked to play sports for as long as I can remember, being able to walk. Um, and I've always wanted to be a professional athlete. Ever since I was a child, I'd always wanted to. I tell people that basketball is my first love. I've said this to girlfriends I've had at the
Mhm.
time that may or may not have been receptive to hearing this, that basketball will always be my first love. Um, because that's was the first sport that I ever watched and enjoyed playing when I was like 3 years old. And uh, um, my first instance with being a fan of anyone was watching Michael Jordan. And so that's a pretty high bar to set. And that's kind of where my love for athletics and sports always came from. And I'd always wanted to be a professional athlete. And because of that, I'd always loved exercise and had loved working out, and had really wanted to dedicate myself to just building my body to be the best that it can be. And so between different sports teams I was on growing up, and even which turned into competing in Taekwondo and getting into martial arts more in my youth as a teen, I just applied that same type of athletic and championship mindset to those things. And so from I'd say like an athletic standpoint, my love for sports helped carry me a lot through that. On the other side, I'd probably say it was kind of how I grew up in
Mhm.
the sense of different experiences I had. I mean, not to I feel like I've heard these stories a lot, and it's more of a testament to, from what I'm about to say, just the reality of what can happen to children. Is I was bullied a lot when I was
Mm.
growing up through school. Being if people didn't already know, I am adopted, so I have a white family, Irish American family, and I'm Korean American, and because of that, unfortunately, I did experience a lot of bullying within grade school, and that didn't make me obviously feel too good about myself. And there was always perceptions back. I guess this is through the '90s now when I was really growing up. There's perceptions around Asian Americans and especially males into how we physically look, our physical appearance, our masculinity, and then they weren't always positive. Um,
Mhm.
and so, because of this, right, as I started to build myself up and fall in love with athletics, I'd always wanted to be able to get into something and do things that made me feel strong, made me feel powerful, because that's how I always tried to build myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and we hear a lot about bullying these days because so much of it is really occurring online, hiding
Sure.
behind computers.
Yeah.
And I too, I dealt with that as well as a child. I was bullied, and it's in person. And
Hmm.
as a woman, bullying, it's I'm not saying one is easier than the other, but men have this. There is a defense that I would say men have a more get tough,
Yep.
build
For
up who you
sure.
are. Where, I don't really know how it would be maintained for women. I think you just kind of like you learn who you're going to keep in your circle, who you're not, how to deal with things. You grow in different ways mentally. But I mean, I didn't never take taekwondo to like, sweep the leg if somebody ticked me off.
Yeah.
But I think there's a sense for being a man, being like a Korean young man in a white family. What mentally did that do for you?
I mean, personally, it mentally gave me something that I can feel like I can always revert back to in terms of a
Mm,
foundation, because that's where, in terms of physical strength, since I was a child, that I always tried to develop it from. One, as being the best athlete that I can make myself to be, but then two, to build myself as a person, as a human that is different than what mainstream media, I guess, and from
mhm.
conversations I would hear from, and things people would say, build a different person than what people would expect or what would be used to when they meet
Yeah.
me.
Now, I know that for you at a young age, as you mentioned, your first love was basketball,
Yeah.
but we had a little conversation
Yep.
a couple days ago where you actually where I asked you, what was your first, love? This is such a great story. I mean,
Yep.
come on, your first love of fitness, and you gave credit to your sister.
Sure. So yeah. So this definitely applies to that too, in terms of continuing that story. I guess in terms of the things that I'm doing now, like with what people see on Daily Burn, or other other opportunities I seek out like that. Things like American Ninja Warrior. Think in terms of being in front of a screen, because when it comes to being in the spotlight, I guess if you will, it's not something that I shy away from ever. And it's not something that really phases me. I feel pretty comfortable in it. And a lot of where that comes from what you were saying, it has to do with my sister. Because when I was growing up, mind you, this is at the same time that I'm probably maybe around 6 or 7 years old. And I'm already.
Not last year.
Yeah, no, not last year. This is a while back. And at that time, as I'm really, falling in love with just being active, I also have a front row seat to watching my sister perform and workout DVDs. And she had like a mini library of workout DVDs. I remember I used to look at them, and I'd always be fascinated by not just the people on the cover, but I would just watch. And I'd never participated because I was just so fascinated that there were people on this screen that she was working out to, that were working out, having fun, and apparently making a career out of it. Like, this is their job. Like, their job is to work out in these big groups on TV and to help people get healthy. And that was, aside from sports, that was my first experience realizing that there's so much more to fitness. But at the same time, because everyone was always smiling, of course, like in those type of workout settings, they're always looking like they have a good time. But for me at that age, it gave me the perspective of like, oh, wow, like that's something I really want to do in life. Like, I hope I can be able to do a workout like that, or I hope I can be able to have a job like that when I'm older. Like, those were thoughts that I had for years. Because I mean, my sister, they're probably still somewhere. Actually, we probably still have those DVDs and VHSs somewhere in the basement.
Do you have a favorite? Do you remember anyone in particular, or any workout video that you were like, I need this in my life?
Oh man, I can't remember honestly anyone in particular until I started getting into them myself later on, like 10 years later.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I was a early, I guess an early adopter of P90X and Tony Horton.
Sure.
Because I remember I bought those late in my teens to work out too. And I mean, I had the same feeling, not just in terms of getting a good workout, but like having the thought in my mind, like, I would love to be able to do something like that. Like, that's like, this is, where can I apply? Like, how do I go about going down that career path? Like, I'd always had that in the back of my mind ever since I had seen that.
And when you see yourself today doing all that you're doing, and then having something as public and prominent as American Ninja Warrior, or even Daily Burn, or any of the other things that you're involved in, how, when you look back on CPK younger and then you now, how does that resonate with you?
Oof, that's a good question, because I in many ways, I feel like I'm still building that aspect of my life, if you will. Like, I've not, the only thought that I've really reflected on in terms of that has been, in so many ways, I am blessed to do those type of things, and to have the opportunity to, and it is in many ways me living out dreams of mine in real life, like literally living out dreams of mine that I had when I was a child, of not really knowing how I can go about that, but somehow, some way, in very serendipitous ways, it's just kind of worked out like that.
Isn't it crazy how things do happen, though? It really is a bunch of synchronicities in our lives. I mean, looking back on our journeys, a lot of times it's just, we're manifesting it if we're in the right mindset without even realizing we're doing it,
For sure. And I think the law of attraction definitely has
Oh,
a
definitely.
huge role to play, whether people believe in metaphysics or not, like that, which I totally do, in terms of, the thoughts you have, and, however you think of yourself, so you become.
Sure.
And I feel like
Thinking
that's
things. Yeah.
exactly. And I feel like that's definitely played a role in probably the biggest influence in my life in terms of things that I'm doing right now, as far as thoughts when I was younger.
Sure. And thinking about something as monumental as making it to a show like American Ninja Warrior, which I mean, that's there are tons of reality shows out there and competition shows, and some are, I mean, I love watching shows like that because it's true conditioning and endurance and free of the drama kind of shows, but
Mhm.
really seeing the stamina and mastery behind the physical body and how a body can really work when the mind is working with it, you know? So when you look back and you see it yourself doing something like that, it must leave a mark with you.
Oh, definitely. And it's one of those things that, I think me personally and others that maybe can relate to this. One, in terms of being on the show, is one of the, best experiences of my life. And at the same time, I've also been trying to, like many people, I always reapply every year. I
Mm-hmm.
always hope to get back on because it's something that I like to hope to continue doing and try and actively continue to participate in. So even though it was a particular moment in time, it's not something that happened and I was just like, okay, that was great. That was a great experience and I'm kind of done with it. No, it's become this huge part of my life and huge part of my career moving forward, probably more so after I was on the show.
Well, but imagine that is the warrior spirit. That is the ninja spirit. You know, it's
Yeah,
not one. It's not one and done. It's a.
yeah,
It's a. It's a life habit forming way of being.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's been able to help just from that show and being open to whatever comes from it,
Mhm.
between work opportunities, between new friendships and bonds. Everything's just been able to continue to progress from there after that because I just always had that mindset of I want to be close to this. I want to continue trying to perform in this, and so yeah.
And that kind of goes back to what you're doing now. You have a gym that you work for, a Ninja Warrior training, which you actually do work with all ages, but you do work with kids a lot. And
Yes.
what is the mission and what is it that you're putting in their mindset when you're working with kids?
So I think the biggest, I'd say, whether it's mindset or whether it's characteristic that I try and instill in them is just the confidence to overcome fear. Because you
Mm,
can have confidence in many things, but it's being able to perform in the face of fear that I feel can really help carry someone through anything they want to do in life. Because we all have fears, and many of them, though, we learn as when we're children, we learn when we're young, and especially in this type of environment, there are hazards all around and it can be scary to move your body in ways that you're not used to. It can be scary to hang from a ceiling as high up as a 10 to 15 foot ceiling. It can just be scary to do so many things, but to instill the confidence in a lot of the youth that I work with, not just to be comfortable with their body, but to teach them how to step by step build their bodies to be more confident to do things that they feel like aren't possible. It's incredible to see their growth,
mhm.
not physically, I mean more mentally, like their growth and time after time coming in every single time with more and more comfort within their own bodies because all of them have different bodies. Like that's a very important thing. This is more like the fitness side of me coming up, but all of them have different bodies. All of them have
Sure.
different physical capabilities, but all of them equally after some time, they all have the same type of confidence
Mhm.
to come in and try whatever it is that day because they know that every single time they come in, they're getting a little bit better, 1% better, 1% better, um, no matter what happens.
And I know that you work with both athletes and then just everyday people that are wanting to stay in shape and take care of, what I like to call it's the only temple you got, right?
Yeah.
So, are a lot of your kids athletes or are they're just inspired by wanting to do something different, not just play a sport, but try something different?
So both.
Okay.
So I'd probably say around half. are, I mean, most of them are involved in some kind of like youth athletics,
Mhm.
but a lot of them honestly just kind of do that because their parents are trying to look for something for them to
Yeah.
do, for being honest. But because of that, all of them can align with ninja and obstacles and
Mhm.
fitness, because being in a ninja warrior or obstacle gym, it's kind of like being in a huge adult organized playground in a sense, with how some of the obstacles are and just playing on them. And a lot of them just like to come in because they love the show and it's something new.
Mhm.
And because of that, though, their interest is already there to want to come in. And once they can see that, oh, it's not just fun for them to do this, they're actually good at it. Like
Mhm.
once they're able to learn specific aspects of whether it's skill, technique, comfort with their bodies, then their own fulfillment just continues to grow, because it's not something that many at that age come into wanting to do all the time. It's more something that is like a video game essentially. Like, oh, I want to have fun today, let me go ninja.
It
But it's
really
fun
is
something
kind of
so
like
much
that.
more.
Yeah, it really is kind of like a video game when you think about it. As you're talking, I'm sitting here going, we are living in a world now where we are seeing so many more opportunities to do the courses, the races,
Yep,
OCRs and stuff. And that whole experience has really, it kind of goes back to you being in your own video game, those obstacle course
for
races that are
sure.
out there, the Spartans and the rugged
Yeah.
maniacs and the mud runs and all that stuff, which are so much fun. And I've done a couple of them, and you sit there and you're at the start line. You're like, oh my God, how am I going to do this?
Yeah,
But
no, definitely.
once you're into it, you're like, I can't go back. you know?
No, definitely not. And we use the video game analogy and not in terms of leveling up
I
in
got it.
different skills, whether it's
Mhm.
balance, strength, grip strength. There's all different aspects that we can continuously level up. And once we learn a new skill, we have a new power up, or there may be a particular obstacle that we haven't conquered yet, and that's like a boss that you have to
Mhm.
defeat to get to the next level. Like we love using the video game analogy
It's a
throughout the
popular
journey.
one, obviously. The
Yeah,
kids today playing the video games, and even adults. I mean, it's something we've been doing for years.
yeah.
So why not incorporate that and kind of put yourself in the game yourself? You
Yeah.
know?
No,
Yeah.
no, 1,000%. And the adults love it too. The adults have a lot of fun with it. And even for the adults that I work with that have that enjoy using the obstacles, they may
Hmm.
not try to be ninja warriors, but they want to be in shape, right? They want
Hmm.
to feel good about their bodies. It's another fun way that they can exercise and that they can train, that's new, and it can keep them interested and it keeps them coming back because their interest level is high, because they have so much fun doing it, because it's one of those things that you don't realize you're exercising or you're working out when you're doing it.
Now, you also mentioned, in addition to the word warrior being used, you say that you train fitness ninjas. What does that mean to you? I love that, by the way. I
Yeah,
mean, every
no,
time I
no,
work
thank
out
you.
with you, I feel like a fitness ninja.
I gotta trademark that.
You do.
So to me, being a fitness ninja means that there is no environment that you feel uncomfortable with your body.
Mhm.
That can mean physically, that can mean mentally. And so being a fitness ninja means you're able to adapt to any type of environment, because you feel that much comfort within your own body.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great way of putting it, because it's
Yeah,
not necessarily ninja, all the movies that we see out there, but it's incorporating it. It always goes back to the mental anyway.
of
You have to be
course.
mentally there and present and believe in what you're doing and be open to the challenge. So being open to the challenge is what changes us.
A
So
1,000% for sure.
I want to go back a little bit what we touched on before, and that was you did briefly mention adoption. And I
Yep,
know this is an area that I knew I wanted us to talk about, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because you've become so much more open since I've known you, and you've probably been talking about it for a long time, is your own story.
on one side, it was amazing
Mhm.
because I was really fortunate that my family, they're really good people, right?
Mhm.
They never taught me to hate. Never, I don't have like a hateful bone in my body. Um, they never, depending on who you talk to within adoption, right? Some people can have different stories. My family never made me feel like I wasn't part of them. Honestly, the only reason I ever found out that I was adopted is because once I was able to tell the difference between my skin color and theirs, I'm just a curious kid, so I asked about it.
I'm sure you weren't the only one, know?
No, and
Sure.
like people would ask about it in school.
Mhm.
They think they're like my foster family or something. Kids don't know what like adoption
Yeah.
is, at that age. I didn't know what it is, obviously, and so I'm coming home like asking all about it. Like, are you
Mhm.
guys my family? What does this mean?
Mhm.
Um, and so I never didn't feel like they weren't my family, and especially like my brother and sister. They did everything they could to keep me around their friends, and they would always bring me around. Which, looking back, was such a blessing and such a great thing that they did, because it gave me such a sense of comfort in myself that I didn't necessarily have with other kids, because I was different because of that. Because going back to something I said earlier, because I would get bullied and it would just be different for me being in school, being around them and their friends all the time. I did have a sense of comfort because of that.
Well, on that note, what would you say to kids today that are adopted or just look different? I mean, what encouraging words would you tell a young a young man or woman?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing with that is that if I was talking to someone right in front of me, I'd tell them, embrace it.
Mm,
Embrace what's different about you and what people say is different about you. Because whether you realize it now, eventually you'll see that is where the greatest opportunities for yourself will grow from.
yeah, those are good words. I like that. And then going forward, just only a couple years ago, you wound up meeting your birth mom,
Yes.
and it was much sooner than you expected,
Yep.
planned on. And a lot of people don't get that opportunity. I mean, so many people don't. So share with listeners what that experience was like.
So I'll start back to when I was a child, because that's where these first thoughts about meeting her came about,
Yeah.
because I had always wanted to. There
Mhm.
was only so much information that my parents had and that was given to them. And with many adoptees, I'd say the majority of them, there is, whether they admit it or not, like a deep-seated otherness that we feel.
Mm.
And meeting our biological parents is something that can help complete and fill that otherness that is there. And I'd always wanted to since I was a child. And as I started to grow older through my teens, and once I started to really figure out, I guess, if you will, like who I am as a person, because honestly, as teens, we don't know who the hell we are.
Yeah.
We're just figuring it out. That has nothing to do with adoption, has nothing to do with ethnic background, it just has to do with maturing.
Yeah.
And a huge aspect of that was me being comfortable with my life and with my path and with possibly never being able to meet my biological parents and my birth mother in this case, because many don't, and I've always been aware of that. And as I grew up, matured, started building a life and career for myself, I just became content with how my life is here, because being adopted from Korea, that's a whole other world that I'm not familiar with. And for me to eventually, meet her, if I ever did, I knew that's something that's a whole can of worms that I would have to address specifically for that. And
Mhm.
because I knew that there was a possibility that walking through that door may not lead to anything, I was always okay with it not happening in a sense, because my life was, for all intents and purposes, wasn't bad. Like, I've been able to build and continue building it. Um,
Mhm.
However, because of all the volunteer work and all the different organizations I'm associated with, being able to meet her, or being able to meet my birth mother, not my birth father, don't have any information on him, but being able to meet my birth mother was something that really just kind of fell into my lap.
Mm.
Because so I've been to Korea 4 separate times now over the last 2 years. The first time was on a home country tour for Korean adoptees like myself.
Mhm.
What I didn't realize at the time was part of that tour was the organization working with the adoption agencies in Korea to potentially try and locate and set up a reconnection with your birth family. I had no idea that was part of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I know. So imagine my thoughts as I realized that was part of it. Because when I went over there, so on this tour, the very last day was visiting the hospital that you were born in, and if they could get in touch with your biological family, even meeting them.
Yeah.
And so I got to visit the hospital that I was born in. I got to see documents on my adoption that I never saw before. And it was like this whole piece of me, this whole being, this whole other side of who I am as a person. It was like a treasure chest being opened for the first time, and there's all this information about myself that I never knew I needed.
Yeah, I remember you sharing that pretty publicly on social, and just a little bit even when we were on set, and it was very moving. Like, your story was so moving. You felt like you're there with
Yeah.
you in a way, because to be in that moment that you weren't planning for, and to walk into the hospital, like where your life started, I imagine that was pretty emotional.
Very. And I honestly was still processing it for months.
Mm.
And I didn't get to meet my birth mother because they sent out messages to, her supposed place of residence, didn't hear anything back, which just more confirmed the thoughts that I had always had. Like, okay, I probably may never get to meet this woman.
Mhm.
And that's okay. I mean, there was so much more that I was given on this trip than I'd ever expected. And that gave me so much fulfillment, but I was still processing everything because emotions, when it comes to anything that's incredibly emotional to who we are as I guess who we identify ourselves as, you can't process information in a day or even a week.
Mhm.
And months. So that was a couple years. This is 2018, I think it was, the summer of 2018. Not until the winter, on Thanksgiving weekend of all times, did I receive a random email. Like, it was really completely random. When I saw it, when I saw the first notification come in, I thought it was a mistake being sent to me, that I received from a social worker at the adoption agency that I was adopted from.
Mhm.
And it was a message to let me know that my birth mother reached out. And holy crap, Hilary, like, I did my world forever get turned upside down after that. Because, mind you, like, I was already content with not
Mhm.
finding her. I mean, I'd always wanted to, and I said in a few years I'd love to come search, but all of a sudden, right on my doorstep, boom,
Yeah, it's like
birth
opening a
mother
whole
reaches
'nother
out.
box,
Yeah. And
I mean.
I'm exactly, and I'm the type, from what you've seen on Daily Burn, whenever people see me doing things, I like to be prepared for everything. That's how I view, like, myself professionally when I go and do things, just things in life. Like, I always like to think of things to kind of give myself a little idea of like what could happen, so I can at least prepare for different scenarios. This was just like, nope, super spontaneous, figure it out internally. And I mean, when I did receive that message, I can't tell you how happy I was.
Mhm.
Number one, because I'm like, oh my god, like, I have so many questions. Like, I had so many questions. I had so many feelings and emotions and thoughts that could never be, uh, could never be complete unless I was able to have a connection with her, or to
Mhm.
have a conversation or some kind of relationship with her. And so I was ecstatic when that happened, and I emailed right back. And from there, it built into months of messaging back and forth, emailing back and forth, until we finally got to meet in the spring.
Do you remember where you were and who the first person was you told?
Actually, um, when I got the first message.
When you were just like, "Holy crap," and you opened you
Oh
realized
my
that
god!
you.
Oh my god! No, I was by myself. This is at, like,
Mm.
because I'm an insomniac, unfortunately, more nights than I would like to admit, and because there's a 14-hour time difference. And so I got this message at like 2:30 in the morning, 3 in the
Mhm.
morning, around there, because it's mid afternoon in
Right.
Korea. And oh my god, proceeded to stay up well through sunrise. Like
Wow.
I could not sleep. And even then, like I messaged back. And then I remember the first time, because I received a message from her, and then I sent this huge message back because I had to think. I really wanted to put a lot of thought into my message I sent back to her, because I didn't know when I could hear something again. And I'll always remember the first, where I was when I received the first message I got back from her, which started the dialogue between us, because I was actually in the gym and I was talking to a friend, a mother of a client of mine, and literally as we're talking, I get the notification that my mother reached out, and it was this huge message from her.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's,
and I was like, oh my
yeah.
god. I was like, oh my god, Leslie, I'm sorry, I have to read this and respond to this. And she was like, oh my god, is everything okay? And then I explained it to her. She was like, oh no, just go. Like, she hugged me and she was like, holy crap, like wow, it was just one of those things, not expecting. And I felt kind of bad at the time, actually. Like, I just threw this on this woman, but I was so excited. Like, this is such a groundbreaking moment for me as a person.
Right. It's not an everyday event.
Yeah,
So,
no. I was
so
like, I'm so sorry to stop this conversation, but I need to stop this conversation.
because I need to have this conversation.
Yeah.
So moving forward from that, you did get a chance to meet your birth mom more than once, if I recall.
Yes.
But I think one thing that I would love for you to talk about a little bit is that, there, it's not always this like hunky dory, everything's perfect, we're going to run to each other in slow mo, like in a movie kind of thing, and embrace and everything's great. I mean, there's years of trauma there's years of
Yeah.
loss, and share how that experience went. I think that's important.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I got to say that I am always going to support adoption, because I think it is something that in many ways is necessary, if it is necessary at all, right? If there is a need for a parent, maybe they can't provide a child with, a particular life they would like to, for whatever the circumstance may be. I fully support adoption, because that's why my mother gave me up, because
Yeah.
she, because I mean, this is in writing, and this is even what she had told me, right? She was in this relationship, and at the time, right, this is in the 80s, she became pregnant. The person that she was with, unfortunately, left her, and in a place like Korea, being a single mother, especially at that time, wasn't exactly something that was, uh, I'd say, welcomed, and that people were open to the idea of parenthood, in terms of single parenthood, in Korea. It's frowned upon at that time. Things have gotten a little bit better, but it would be very difficult for a woman out of wedlock to even remarry if they had a child, a known child. And because, work situations and whatnot, it was just a very difficult situation for her. And so I understood why she gave me up for adoption. And so there are moments that it is necessary. But at the same time, something that I think people are not, from what you were alluding to, maybe aware of, is that there is a whole other side to adoption, where it is great in many aspects that children can grow up in an environment that would otherwise be much more welcoming and supportive than one that they could have. But there's so much trauma on the other side of where they come from, on the birth mother side, that's never spoken about. And it was that I really started to learn more of as I started to grow my relationship with my birth mother, because she would express to me, and she expressed to other social workers too, who I would talk with, just the guilt that she had over it. She never got to hold me, right? When she gave birth, and she'd always had guilt over just what had happened. And that followed her entire life. And unfortunately, she lived a very difficult life. And, long story short, she's been through other traumatic experiences within her life. And being a mother, I remember she told her words to me, and this broke my heart when she said it to me, but it really gave me insight into just how much pain that she had, was that she believed that God basically uh, she believed that God had given her this life because of what she did,
Oh,
in
like
terms of,
penance.
yeah,
Mm, that's
like
a tough
this,
place.
yeah, like this is what she deserves because she gave me up.
Oh, it's heavy.
So anything that happens to her, she deserves it for what happened,
Mm,
and that broke my heart to hear.
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, and I think there's situations where we all think like, "Oh man, I deserve that," you know,
Yeah,
but nobody deserves that kind of pain
sure,
and upset. I mean, she did the most unselfish act,
yeah.
uh, giving up a child, giving that child a chance, but the trauma that she must be dealing with and then seeing your face again, it kind of brings it back to perspective for her, most likely, you know?
It definitely did, especially because we look alike.
Oh,
I clearly
yeah,
have her features,
yeah,
and you can clearly see that we either, if we're not related, then there's something in our bloodlines where
yeah.
from someone we are, someone close to us we are. Um, and so, unfortunately, between that, and then I guess in terms of how mental health is viewed,
Yeah.
in Korea over the years, I believe that she has had other psychological
Mhm,
trauma that
mhm.
had never been properly addressed, especially because of certain ways that she would interact with me, certain mood swings she would have, just in conversations we would have. Because sometimes she could be very abusive in her words, not prompted by anything, just it would switch on and on like a light switch.
Yeah,
um, that it led me to believe that she, either she's bipolar, or maybe, or there's something else, that mentally hasn't been addressed properly. Unfortunately, I had made the decision months back to stop communication with her,
mhm.
because communicating with her became so difficult that we couldn't even have conversations anymore, because it would take me hours sometimes to craft messages that were clear and coherent, because this is a different language.
Yeah. She doesn't
Right?
speak English.
She doesn't speak English,
Yeah, so
and
everything
so,
was basically written word.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And she would send, and it would be sent to me in Korean, and
Mhm.
I don't speak Korean, so I would need all my messages verified and sent back that it's exactly what I say or mean.
Yeah,
um, and things just in our relationship just got to the point where it was it was more both of us, either combative
mhm.
with each other, or defensive. And I knew it came from I knew a lot of it stems from trauma that she has, that's never been resolved, because she's been on her own her whole life.
Yeah,
Like, you imagine 50 years old, always being on your own your whole life, and then partly because of the language barrier between us, in that gap, there was just so much between the two of us that we couldn't resolve. Um, that unfortunately it got so bad that I had to just stop communicating with her.
and I can imagine the delay too. It's not like you're having the conversation word to word, face to face, using language.
No,
You're doing it pen and ink or black and white,
yeah.
where there's a delay and emotions are gonna be different.
So here's another layer to this. So it was mostly through email in the beginning, but we ended up texting. We ended up
Ah,
exchanging numbers. Um,
mm,
but because of that, I think this is where a lot of the communication started to, um, I guess, dissolve,
yeah.
because she could respond quickly. I was the one that would have to take so long to craft a message back.
Well, that shows your maturity too, also. I mean, the fact that you're
Trying.
seeing you're trying you know what? We're works in progress. We really are. And there's a lot of stuff going on there that
Yeah.
that this is so much more. And I guess the question I would have is, while you've closed the door to this right now, and to those listening as well who might be in similar situations or hoping that maybe they can meet their birth mother, what is your hope? Do you have the door unlocked to the possibility
Oh,
of reuniting?
the door is always unlocked.
That's good to
And
hear.
I genuinely, Hilary, that there's nothing I wish more than to have a relationship with her.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that right now, just in terms of how my life is also too, like it's just almost impossible
Yeah.
for me to commit to that. But I hope sometime sooner than later, I can spend as much time as I need in Korea that I can, you know, help build it. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just taking a step back, and not knowing exactly the work she could possibly be doing. So I hope that for you, my friend. I really do.
Thank you.
But it's beautiful that you had the opportunity to see a part of your journey on this planet that you never saw before until the last couple years. It's a connection, a root in the ground that you weren't aware of prior, or didn't know where the root came from, in a way. you know
And you know what? It's something where, as difficult as it's been, it's one of those experiences that I enjoy speaking with. I have no problem being open speaking about it
Mhm.
with others, and especially other adoptees, because at some point, an adoptee is going to have these type of thoughts in terms of their biological family,
Yeah.
and you know, fortunately and unfortunately, if someone does have the opportunity to meet them, while there are great stories um, of like fairy tale meetings
Hmm.
and relationships being built, my story is something that is very common
Yeah.
with other adoptees as well. And because of that, though, I enjoy speaking with others,
Yeah.
to help give them insight into emotions and things they could experience and feel.
Do you think your discipline within the fitness community has helped your mindset and how you process this situation?
Oh, definitely. I mean, my core disciplines stem and have always been built from fitness
Hmm.
and from exercise and building my body, because that's something where no matter how I'm feeling, regardless, I can always go and exercise and that's where I actually go. That's kind of my own form of meditation, like going to
Yeah.
exercise, because I'll take the time as while I'm doing it, like I'll have these thoughts in my head. I'll try and sort them out and try and just, um, I always like to two things I always like to do when I'm feeling a certain way. I either A, like to sleep on it,
Hmm.
and then
Smart.
and tell myself I will address this the next day, and depending on how I'm feeling, I'll commit to something after that,
Mm.
into some course of action. But I'm at least going to sleep on it, because I don't like to make do anything in a very emotional state. Um,
Well, that's the warrior, the conditioning of not reacting, right?
yeah,
I mean,
and
you don't see that happening too often.
and then second, I like to have my most meditative and contemplative thoughts while I'm actually exercising, while I'm training, because I always do it on my own, and it allows me to get energy out,
Mhm.
so I'm not keeping everything pent up inside. Um, and then after that, because it's very difficult to not feel better after a workout for different
Sure.
chemical reasons.
Releases those
Uh,
happy chemicals, absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so then after that, just kind of like the way I sleep on things, I like to revisit thoughts and feelings I have, um,
Mhm.
to come to a better decision on what to do.
So, one other thing I want to talk about as we start to wrap things up. I mean, we're living in a time right now where there is a lot of angst, there's a lot of upset happening, and you have been pretty present and open, uh, especially with the Black Lives Matter and just the protesting going on. And pretty
Yes.
recently, you've made yourself present and vocal. And I wanted to touch on that. I know that you shared something with me personally, but with the listeners, why have you been so open? What was your reason for being so vocal?
Gotcha. So first of all, the biggest reason me being so vocal is many people are too afraid
Hmm.
to be vocal. There's been plenty of people that I've spoken with and that have reached out to me that have said that through different posts that I've made or videos that they've seen, that they wish they could either speak like I can or be able to, put words together openly as I can. And plenty of people are afraid to put themselves out there publicly.
Yeah.
But coming back to a lot of things that I do and like to do, I'm not that type. But I also don't like to speak on things that I either don't have any experience with or am not educated on. And I don't like to speak on things that I really have I have no place. Like, I'm not involved with it. But with this in particular, in terms of Black Lives Matter, or the current, I guess I'd say, tension within the states right now, all actually comes back to a terrible case of racial profiling that I had gone through as a teen. And I'll paraphrase it for this, but long story short, in the town next to where I grew up, actually, one night I was pulled over for a simple speeding ticket. I mean, how many 19-year-old kids speed? But what happened after that, where I thought that I was just going to get rid of the speeding ticket, whatever, and that'll be it, turned into one police officer calling 3 other police officers to come and support him because he thought I was trying to escape I thought I was trying to get away, in his own words, literally said that he called in backup because he thought I was trying to get away, even though I was pulling over to the side of the road. And it turned into me being, that's the best way I could say this. I'd say, best way I could say is verbally assaulted for the next half an hour, because nothing physically happened, but I was clearly trying to be antagonized into some kind of reaction, because they searched my entire car. Had no reason to, right? But they searched my entire car, top to bottom, for illegal paraphernalia, drugs, and weapons, all because of some incident that happened earlier in the day involving someone else. And I had a police officer get right up inches away from my face and started accusing me of being associated with different gangs, started accusing me of lying about what I was talking about, and trying to relate and trying to connect me to someone that they had arrested earlier in the day. And the biggest, I'd say, point of support that he had in doing this was he looked at something I was wearing, which was a Boston Red Sox beanie, and he says to me, he goes, "Hey, what's that B stand for on your hat?" And I just look at him kind of dumbfounded. I'm like, "Red Sox?" And he goes, "Are you sure it doesn't mean the Bloods?" I looked at him, I was like, "What are you talking about?" And this turns into this whole rant about different gangs that they're investigating, different gang related activity that they're investigating. And mind you, I've never been associated. Like, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking to myself, like, this can't be real. Like, this has to be a joke. Am I getting punked? Like, this is a bad scene from some kind of like candid camera TV show. And so I'm getting accused of all these things, and I just keep denying. They keep me there, whatever, write me a ticket. And I'm familiar because I've heard other stories of other African American, other Black friends that I have, of incidents that happened to them, but I'd never had anything, personal happen to me. This was the first time, and I was like, "Holy crap! I can't believe that just happened." And so the very next day, I go with my father to the police station in this town where it happened, because we wanted to report, we wanted to file a case, or we wanted to, whatever, I mean, I don't know what you would do in this at that time at 19. But my dad was like, "Hey, let's just go there. Let's try and file a report on what happened." We walk in the next morning, and we were in there for all of 5 minutes, because we go in there. My father asks to speak to the commanding officer. I think the lieutenant comes out. My father says that his son was racially profiled the night before. Verbatim. All that happens next is the cop asks, what time did this happen at? My father says 11:30. The commanding officer laughs at us, and says, "You expect me to believe that racial profiling happened at 11:30 at night? What a joke. Have a nice day, folks." And he walked away.
Like, what does that even mean?
Exactly. I mean,
I
that
mean,
was,
where's the
yeah.
timestamp, you know?
Can you imagine my father's look on our faces and what we were thinking, and just as we were walking out of there? Mind you, this is all like pre-social media, like it is now. So we had no idea what anything we could do.
Yeah.
And just kind of had to let that be for years. And now I gotta say, like, that's the only like, I'd say really not just negative but terrible experience I've had with a police officer. My grandfather was a cop. Plenty of friends of my family are police officers in different towns. My cousin is. I've partied with different cops. I've been pulled over for different things, for speeding and whatever, parking, different small little violations. Never had an experience like that. That's been the only one. But
it was enough.
It wasn't just that it was enough. It highlighted how unless you really experience it, because imagine, like, my father's always been an upstanding citizen, done everything the right way. Always worked within the city. Like, he worked for a couple of different cities, worked in different towns. Has never had to even think about having a negative experience like that has to do with race. He sees this from a commanding officer, not just the people that are out patrolling, but someone that was in charge of the department, right? And from there, it just kind of changed our just whole perspective on I guess what people would consider quote unquote bad apples. But bad apples only grow from bad up in a real life sense in society. Bad apples can only grow if the soil is dirty.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's plenty of soil across this country that is dirty. Not all of it, but where it is, those patches in these particular gardens in these cities is incredibly dirty and dangerous because of that. And so I've just been using my platform, my voice, to speak out. And I've been using that as the biggest example, because if that can happen to me, I have an Irish American family. I like to think I speak well and can speak educated and am not an intimidating presence.
Yeah, you do. I mean, when I saw that video of you in the square, and I'm like, what is he? What you commanded, and I was very moved by it. And it made me even more interested in your story, because here you were surrounded in an environment where some might be like, well, why is he talking?
Yeah.
But why shouldn't you be talking?
Exactly.
And sharing and listening. It's not just, I think we're doing a lot more listening, I hope. But what would be your hope from all of this? What would be your hope to see happen from everything that is happening right now?
So I guess there's two different wishes I'd say I have. I think one is already happening, where many, and I'd say even someone like yourself, they're becoming more enlightened to these things, to these experiences that others like myself have gone through, because it's something where, even though it was a moment in time, for example, it's something that every single day, every time I drive, every time I pass a police officer, that I think about. Because I don't know. I mean, it's almost like, how obviously crime is very bad, and there are unfortunately some deranged psychopaths out there. But it's not something we think about, right? You don't walk the streets, you don't go grocery shopping thinking that, oh, someone's going to attack me, right? You don't think about those things, like, typically, like, through your everyday life, like every moment. But every moment I pass a police officer, I think about this, because I don't know what this person has in their heart. I don't know what this person's views are of me. And I live in a generally diverse area, so I can't even imagine what it's like to live in a more rural area.
Yeah, but there's also the side of what we've been hearing a lot in the conversations I've been listening to, is that certain there are people that do every time they walk out their door, like, be careful how you answer somebody's question, because
Yep.
the Black community has been very open about sharing, like, saying, I do think about those things every time I walk out my door.
Sure.
And I don't know if I've ever thought of that before, because I am privileged,
Yeah.
and I am a white woman. And I it resonated with me, because I'm like, nobody should ever have to
Yeah.
feel that way.
I
Nobody. So what
couldn't
do we
agree more.
do to stop that?
Well, I think the awareness, number one, is an important, right? Once you realize that this is a problem, like many are starting to be enlightened to,
Hmm.
and then it's um, more, what actions can we take to
Hmm.
help correct this? Where unfortunately, I don't think something like racism is ever going to be completely eradicated, and that's just unfortunate. But that doesn't mean that it can't be uh, contained in a way,
Hmm.
and it can't, and the growth of it can't be minimalized to a point where, for example, cockroach, like, no one, people know cockroaches exist, but we much prefer them in the walls where we can't see them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, and so I think being able to educate others more on race relations, on I guess the history of ethnic groups within this country, is important to enlighten us,
Yeah.
to help educate. As cliche as it is, educate the youth that are coming up on what history has been in this country in race relations, in education as well. And so, um, so the next generation can help be better, because that's something that's taught
Hmm.
in terms of that type of evil, that I call it generational hate.
Yeah, definitely.
It's something that's passed down. Um,
There's also generational love,
exactly. No,
right? Why
exactly.
don't we
It's,
go
it's
that
one or
way?
the other. It's one
Yeah.
or the other for
You
sure.
can't have both in the same existence.
Nope. Not at all.
Yeah.
And so that's, I guess the biggest where I'd say that someone can help. I guess immediately within their own circles, outside of more systemic type of educational reform, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah. We can go on for hours, my friend.
Yeah, I know.
No, but what you've done is you've really shared some groundwork, and your voice matters. And I love how you mentioned that you're using your voice because you're somebody people recognize. You have your own following. You're in the public eye, and if you're going to be in that space, and I think this every day, it's not about me. It's about,
Yeah,
what can I do with what I have and use it for good. That's where I'm so impressed by people who are speaking out. Um, and they're and it doesn't mean only the celebrities doing it, because there's a lot of celebrities
yeah,
out there that are like, I'm not going to say anything. It needs to come from the streets.
yeah,
I think Dave Chappelle actually had a really good.
yeah. He
Oh
did.
man, that was like,
Eight
whoa.
forty
I sat
six.
there like
Yeah.
I felt that.
Uh huh.
But what we can do as everyday people is be more aware and more open, and keep listening, but be a voice in our own right of, this is who I am and this is why I'm listening. Join me in this, you know? So,
Exactly. No,
yeah.
couldn't agree more.
So
Couldn't
I
agree
think, yeah, thank you. It's amazing, what you're doing, and I love everything about you. And you are a warrior. You are a ninja.
more. Thank you.
You're amazing. So I want to close real quick, just doing a quick rapid fire, throw some words
Sure.
out at you and see
Sure.
what you think, and then we'll close it out there. Is that cool?
Yeah. Let's go.
Fitness,
Home.
ninja.
Warrior.
Oh, okay, warrior.
uh, Strength.
Nice. Korea.
Heart.
Adoption.
Love.
Family.
Everything.
Activism.
Future.
Oh, that is the best one to end on. I love that, because aren't we moving forward, right?
Uh huh. For
Future.
sure.
That's great. CPK, my friend, Chris. It was such a pleasure having you on Holistically Speaking. We are definitely I'm hoping to see you again in person.
Likewise.
I miss your spirit, but I'm glad I get to at least work out with you once in a while, right? Online. I just want to share with our listeners also that if you want to get in touch with Chris, you can reach him on his website. I'll add that into the notes, but it is cpkfitness.com. Such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the show here today and for being a warrior, a ninja, and just an advocate of love.
No, thank you so much, Hilary, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for listening to this episode of HIListically Speaking. I'm Hilary Russo. The show is produced by Alan Seals with music by Lipbone Redding. You can find me at hilaryrusso.com. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Hilary Russo. And if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review HIListically Speaking. And let's connect. Until next time, be safe, be well, and don't forget to laugh.